Do you want to solve a century-old crime, or gain unlimited power, build your own castle, or just kill some zombies? If so, then the world of tabletop games is just for you. Coming up next, Ukrainian tabletop players who know how to have great fun and have a very rich imagination will tell us about all the peculiarities of this hobby. Tabletop games for me are another world altogether and a way to find a worthy adversary. Shall we fight Cthulhu together? I spend 70% of my time on tabletop games because it's cool, interesting. It allows one to develop their fantasies and imagination and is simply a great way to spend time. I love to read interesting books, to watch impressive, fascinating movies, to play video games, but a tabletop game, compared to all of that, is way, way cooler, as it allows you to create a story yourself. Tabletop games were born quite a long time ago. Everybody knows about chess, everybody knows about Go. A lot of tabletop games come from ancient times. For us, from the Soviet times, so to speak, came such games as Lotto. Monopoly is pretty well developed. Chess and dominoes are all basically tabletop games. In Ukraine, some localized games or games in English without translation started to emerge in the beginning, so the first tabletop players were those in the process of learning English or already knew the language. The games are of different origins. There are original games, for example. An original game is brought from the US called Blood Rage. It is not translated, it's in English, or some German game, or a Chinese one is brought here. But there are localized games. For these games, a contract with a publisher was signed. The game was translated into Russian or Ukrainian, and so we have a localized game that is in huge demand, and we can sell here to Ukrainian fanatics. Sometimes the localization brings not only translation of the text of the game, but even the design changes or addition of some new mechanics. In fact, there are not so many publishing houses in Ukraine. For example, the guys from Khmelnytsky are more known than other publishers. They have about 6 games, some of which have already become worldwide hits. We have already one game that is slowly starting to spread, not only across Ukraine, but all around the globe. In Ukraine, it's already available in every club. We were spotted in Russia and are negotiating with foreign publishing houses to release this game under license. It's the game Defender of the Crown. It's a tabletop tower defense. If a person likes some strategy games and likes to think, it's the game for them. It's a dual game set in a fantasy world. There are 4 races: humans, elves, the undead, and orcs. I've been into tabletop games for about 2 years now. Before, I used to write quests for quest rooms and showrooms for about a year and a half. Then I had an idea to create my own game, and so entered the world of tabletop games. To create your own tabletop game, one should play some other games to get a good grasp of the mechanics of the games, and based on this, create something new on your own. The first game, funny as it may sound, was a pretty common game considered kitsch in the world, the Munchkin. At one wonderful moment, I saw it, got my hands on it for quite a low price for that time, came home, opened it, sat down with my buddies, we played a bit, and it all went from there. It began with Munchkin, and then I got acquainted with such a gaming system as Warhammer. It's of a horribly large scale, is extremely expensive, and a very difficult game to play, but it's interesting because it's absolutely wild and crazy. One day I visited my friends who had been playing various interesting tabletop games for quite some time. The game was called Descent, an epic tabletop game which requires a company of people to meet 5 to 6 times to beat, or 24 hours of non-stop playing. And so I was dragged into it. It has a duration and a plot appears. The events are not abstract like I defeated you or you defeated me, but cooperative raids of some dungeons, fighting monsters and developing characters. That is what makes it much more interesting for me personally.
Нету единой классификации игр.
A unified games classification does not exist. As I imagine it, there are some war games, strong strategy games, taking 2 hours and more to play. Then there are developing games for kids, games for parties. Those are fillers, meaning games with easy mechanics that take a maximum of 1 hour to play, and most importantly, the rules are easy to explain. There are also collection games.
Игры, варгеймы, если это какие-то коллекционные.
As for war games, if it's a collection type like Warhammer, then you need a group of people, a big table, and specific miniatures must be present on the table. Thus you need quite a large room and a table that not everyone has in their own home.
Есть тоже отдельная каста людей и отдельная...
There is a separate group of people and a certain type of tabletop game. They are war games. Those are large game systems, and there are a great many of them, but the most popular ones are Warhammer 40,000 and Warhammer Fantasy Battle. The point of the game is that it's a big war game in which cards aren't used, as well as what is called the field. An entire table is used, which is usually quite large and completely decorated to look like a battlefield. Miniatures are put on the table, starting with common soldiers to robots of incredible size.
Солдатами и заканчивается роботами нереальных размеров.
There are also tabletop role-playing games. For them, you need a good company and a quiet place. There are introvert players who prefer playing at home and don't like going anywhere else.
Есть отдельная каста людей, которые играют настольные ролевые игры.
There's a separate group of people who play role-playing games. Those are games in which there is no field, such as unless the host makes it up. In our world, the host is called the Game Master. He creates a separate world and leads the players through it. He creates a fully written-out world. All the characters, sometimes even up to every citizen in the town. The players can approach them, talk with them, and the master will play their roles, the citizens' roles. No matter what questions the players ask, the master will answer them from the position of the citizen, not as a real-life person. All this game requires is several A4 sheets of paper to write the statistics on and a set of 7 different dice. The dice are a separate topic. This is something special for everyone. There are players who are absolutely calm with their dice set, but there are those who are obsessed with their dice sets and forbid anyone to touch them. There are easy games and there are difficult ones. The easy ones are easy to play at home. Difficult games require a worthy opponent. Therefore, tabletop game clubs gather people based on different types of tabletop games. Are you strong at strategy games? Find a strong opponent and you can play a good game against them, because the game takes 8 hours to play, and if you don't have a worthy opponent, then playing isn't interesting.
Compared
to video games, tabletop games are in the end, and in my subjective opinion, more about communication. Of course, I'm talking primarily about live communication, not through the monitor, microphone, headphones and chat, and generally these are entirely different impressions. Like a movie and a book. Reading a book, you imagine, your imagination is working more. The same goes for a tabletop game. A professional who makes a video game isn't making the picture for you, but you imagine this world on your own, and your friends are imagining it along with you, and you are doing something interesting together in this imaginary world. I have never played Monopoly produced by anyone else. I once played a PC version of Monopoly, and together with my family we made our own game. I remember I made copies of Ukrainian hryvnias. They were so small and black and white. It was great to make a game with your own resources and then play it with your friends and family. To create a game, an author is required. This is a person who basically makes up the game on his own. The creation of the game begins from 2 aspects. On the one side, it's some setting, so a person likes fantasy, and in terms of fantasy, they start thinking of something. The second way to make a game is mechanics, meaning a person created some game mechanics, and then it is put into a setting. First, a prototype is created. It is played with friends and acquaintances to see whether people get engaged in it or not, and whether it is interesting for them to play. Only then can such a game be developed. You can try sending the game to some publisher, like to us, in order for us to take a look at it and decide how relevant it is, or simply give some advice on how to make it more interesting. If the publisher likes the game, the production process begins. Components of the game are thought through. How many artworks it requires, the design. Then a team is gathered, or there already is a team that works on drawing artwork, and designers lay out the cards. A team of professionals starts working to turn the concept into an interesting and marketable product. Among the Ukrainian games, there are some really good ones. I like the game Good Find for a Spy. The entire game revolves around a certain number of locations. Each location is represented as a deck of cards, where there is an image of the location and one spy card. The cards are spread among the players in order for everyone to get a location and for one player to receive a spy card. The player's goal is to figure out who is the spy. Communication is based on questions. I found it very interesting because I am very fond of mafia-like games, but after talking to the author of the game, I understood that the mechanics of the game is very much broader. The ones who master this game become a very artful bluffer. It's very cool when a game is gradually developing for you. In other words, you don't get bored after 2 to 3 games and you want to find new aspects in it. There are tournaments for tabletop games. They take place both here and abroad. The ones abroad are usually some world championships with big money prizes. The most popular is Magic the Gathering, a card collection game which has a lot of elimination rounds. First come local ones, where we play in clubs with a common rating system. Players get points, then an all-Ukrainian tournament takes place. The winners of the national tournament go abroad. Their travel and accommodation expenses are funded by the organizers. Considering that it's not so well developed here yet, tabletop games are now starting to crawl into the minds of people. They are yet to develop here more and more. New games and new mechanisms are appearing, and the modern-day tabletop games industry is constantly growing.